it's Linda of Lányos Handmade, and today we're going to go over a few patterns from Cork and Copper Designs. We have a hack for you of the Pennyroyal Pouch. I think I just sat on it. Just a sec. I did. There you go. We have a hack for you for the Pennyroyal Pouch. We're going to add a shoulder strap, and we're going to be using her strap ends from her pattern and her appliqués from her Morbs pattern. And when you're using appliqués, make sure when you're pressing them on that you're thinking about your finished size, because this pattern has a base on it, right? And you don't want the appliqué to go into the base. You want it to be right across the border here if you're putting one on there, or right centered. So pay attention to what your finished object is going to look like. The other thing we're going to do is we're going to go over Cricut Maker and cutting. This is foil and this is glitter. And this is a hex bag. The link will be below for the sew along, because just in case you want to make one for yourself, there is a sew along for this bag too. But we're going to be going over the Cricut Maker, and we're going to be going over the heat press that we need to attach those applique vinyls onto our bag. And we're going to be going over her strap ends to attach a strap and hack her pattern. So there's all sorts of interesting things that we can be talking about today. And don't forget, I'll have timestamps below for the Cricut Maker, the Cricut Heat Press, the Pennyroyal Pouch Sew Along, and the hacks. Be sure to check out some of the links. You never know, you might find something that you like. Okay, got a huge table here, but still a limited amount of space because I don't have a small mat. So what I'm using is my green mat. This one says standard grip on it. I always have to double check, make sure I've got the right stuff. I've got some vinyl here that I'm going to cut out my front and back from. And to match, I'm going to make this heat transfer vinyl, or Cricut calls it iron-on, and it's glitter. So that would probably look good with that. So now I have to cut this image out here. If you're wondering about this, this is not smart vinyl, so I do need a mat for it. Smart vinyl just means you don't need a mat. And I also peeled back one of the corners to show you that the glitter is on the inside, so the right side is inside. This is your plastic carrier sheet that you can have your image stick to, so that later you can press it onto that vinyl I showed you. This is the wrong side of my glitter vinyl, which is a bit obvious because that's shiny. So we shall stick the clear down on the mat and the nasty side of the vinyl showing up. So I will stick this on here. I guess now that I messed up that corner to show you, I'll make sure it's at the back here. So we shall just stick this on here and make sure it's pressed down really well. No bubbles. There, that's on there really nice. Feels funny right there. There. Now we can stick this in our machine. I'm sorry if the big mat is in your way. And when we start it up, it'll feed through. But let's just hold on to this for a minute here. We have to find our image. Pick it and add it to the canvas. Ungroup it. Get rid of the 1 inch because we don't have to see that. Now let's get rid of the smaller one. So now we can move the bigger one over. I like to have it in the top here, so just slide it up here, click and slide. So now that we've got the one we want, let's press make. I don't want to save the project, I've got it already. It's on my screen here. It's on my mat, and actually I have a huge mat, so I'm just going to put it in here just in case it makes a difference. And I'm going to mirror my image because this is wrong side up. So if we cut it, it's going to be the wrong side. So it's good to get in the habit of making sure that if your right side is facing down, you want to make your image face down too, so you reverse your image. And let's continue. Now, after continue, we've got, make sure we've got our mat mirrored, and I have foil from my last project saved, bookmarked, but I don't have glitter, so let's search for glitter in iron on, which of course for them is the same as heat transfer. Let's see if I can find glitter mesh, glitter iron on. I'm going to bookmark that for next time, and I'm going to choose that. So now it's glitter iron on. And it tells me make sure to mirror right here so that the shiny side, like the glitter side, is down. Now the pressure is default, and we already have a fine point blade in. Let me just show it to you. This is a fine point blade here. It's got a little itsy bitsy pointy knife on it. So that's our fine point blade. If you ever press that button when it's facing down, it'll fall out. So let's put this back in. Now, after making my messed up little corner here to show you what it looked like, I'm making sure my corner is down here where nothing's going to be rolling or cutting. I'll stick it in. And it already tells me what to do. Load my mat, press the button. I'm going to have to move this. And it says everything loaded and ready to go, so press go. I also have to watch my wires in the back here. You do need space on the other side of your machine because your mat comes out about, I think that's about 6 inches or something. So you've got to make sure you've got room for your mat to feed back and forth. And now it's going to cut. And it's telling you here that it's cutting and how far it's gotten. And it says it's done. Push it out. I find it easier if it's turned upside down to pull it off. Let's make sure you're getting that plastic backing sheet because I messed with this corner, right? You want to make sure we get the plastic backing sheet. There. I could tell I wasn't because I had something very thin. This is what I want. Yeah, the plastic backing sheet was peeling off here, but this is not a section I'm using, so I will just press it down. Now our cut, you can very faintly see it on this side, and you can see it on this side. I'm going to cut this extra off and then start weeding it. So now for some weeding. I won't show you the whole process, but let's find a corner and rip it open so we can start picking the vinyl that we don't want off of here. See how nicely it sticks? So we can go all the way around this image and get rid of the bad stuff. There, so that's starting to look like something. It's got little eyeballs in here we have to get rid of. Okay, so now I need some teeth. Am I done? I think I'm done. Okay, let's take this, oops, all this static. Let's take this over to our heat press now, and we'll put it down on our vinyl, which I haven't cut out yet. I'll cut out my vinyl and put it on my vinyl, and then we shall see how it looks. Okay, I've got my vinyl piece. It's on my mat. This is Cricut mat. Protects everything from the heat. And I've got my foil iron on that I can stick on top, and then I'll press it. In the meantime, let's check if our press is the right temperature. I'm going to look up the heat guide, and it says it needs to be 255 for 30 seconds. So let's adjust the temperature. 255 for 30 seconds. 255, yep. Has to be 255 for 30 seconds. It's going to have to cool down because I had it hotter before for a different project. And it beeps when it's ready, 255 for 30 seconds. And I'm just going to press this a little bit, put a Teflon sheet over top because I don't want to damage my vinyl. Just for maybe 5 seconds. I really notice things stick better when the base is a little bit warm too. Now I have to place this on here, and I have to place it according to her pattern instructions. Got little hairs on here from a cat, I think. I don't want those. Okay, I'm just going to check her measurements again one more time, and then we put this down. Now you'll notice the good side of this vinyl, let's just pick it off a bit, is inside. So this is the bad side of the vinyl. This is your clear cover, and we're going to press it down. Okay, so I've measured it out. This is where it's supposed to go. Just stay there, don't curl up. Put my Teflon sheet back on. And I can press start when I get it on here. And the timer will tell me when to stop. Beeped. So now we can take a little peek, but I'm not going to pull it off yet because, yeah, it looks like it's good. It says don't pull off until it's cool. So you just sit there. I hope I didn't mess up the corner looking. Okay, so we're going to put this aside to cool down. And while we're at it, just stay there, we're going to put on our interfacing. Got my interfacing here. I've got my layer for my lining. It's a bit wrinkly. I think I'm going to press that a bit too. I should look up how much time interfacing takes on cotton. But it sure seems to do the trick after just a couple of seconds. Okay, my 2 interfacing pieces here. It's going to be the lining. So I wonder if this thing's cool yet. Yeah, that's fine. I'm just going to peel it off. Don't know if you can see that because it's very dark, but it's coming off really well. So I'll keep pulling and I'll show you what it looks like. What do you think? Can you see that? It's very, very dark. Sorry about that. Maybe if I hold it this way. I'm liking it. Okay, now I'll go sew. Okay, I think I'm ready to go now. I've got all my pieces. These are my fronts, my backs, and my insides. I'm going to cut out some foam if this is too floppy to make a foam layer inside, but we'll see how that goes. Oops, this is lifting up a bit. Put a little bit of glue underneath that. But most of it's going to be caught in the seam allowance anyway on these edges. So I don't need the fronts and the backs right at the moment. What I'm going to do is get the zipper ready. So I've got this handy little thing that helps me put my zippers on, just as long as I don't crush my coils when I trim my zipper. Sometimes I have to trim them again. There you go. So there's our zipper ready. Oh, and it's shut on this end too. That's lucky. Now it looks even better. Okay, this is my zipper tab. I'm just going to, since it's raw edge material, I don't have to double fold it. I can leave the raw edges exposed. So I'm just going to squish that down. And then I'm going to sew across to make sure it stays on. And there you have it. Nice little zipper all set to go. Okay, the other thing I did when you might not have been around is I put my label on and I marked the seam allowance that she wants. This is more than the seam allowance. It's the space that you're supposed to leave open when you're putting the zipper on so that you don't end up with a crushed zipper. That's most the reason why people end up, they can't turn their bags and the zippers are all squished up into the seam. You're not supposed to sew anything into the seam. So I'm going to start from here and clip this on. I've got the right sides together of my outer layer and my zipper. And I'm going to go across. Now when it comes to this is extra long because, I just opened that. We again have to stay out of that seam allowance here. So I'm going to bend this at an angle and clip it. And I'm going to sew that angle in as I come around. And I think that's lined up nicely. So I'm just going to sew that on. And as you can see, it'll end up looking like this. And then I can put the other front on. Front, back, I don't know what it is. There, it's on here, it's basted on. That seam allowance is going to be sewn again when we stick the lining on. So I'm not too concerned about the width of it right now. And you see it's bent in nicely. So let's do it on the other side. Put the other layer together. I don't know, I always look at these things better from one side compared to the other side. I just get used to it. Oh, there, I found it perfectly. So make sure you stay within those 2 marks that she has. Now, we have to find our little line. Look at that mess there. I should trim that off so I can see. There's my line. And I want this bent. After we clip it, we can check it again. Yep. So now we're leaving that space for seam allowance and so that nothing gets eaten in the side seams. It's starting to loosen up there. Let's tighten you up. Really sharp angle. Now that's too sharp. Ha-ha. That's better. You might notice I moved my zipper pull as I was sewing so that I didn't run over it. And I'm going to sew that on now too. Stay within these, don't go over, remember, don't go over into the seam allowances. There, now it's sewed onto both outside layers. Now let's get the inside layers sewn onto it. And when I was sewing, oh, there's a thread hanging there. When I was sewing, I ended up with my machine making an awful racket. And I thought, what the heck is this? But of course I kept going and ignored it because, you know, that's what we do. And then my thread broke and I thought maybe my bobbin was out. And I only had 1 inch left to go. That's why I was pushing myself. Well, look at this is what was inside my machine on the top, coming down, and it started to get balled up at the needle, and it got inside even messed up like that, all tangled. So when your machine makes noise, just stop. Don't do like I do, and rethread it. See if that helps. Might make a difference. Okay, let's put on another layer. So what I like to do is open it up a bit like this. Flip it over. This is what we want the inside to look like, right? We want it to look like this, but we can't sew it like this. So let's turn it over this way and join it with this side. And let's test it after to see if we've got it facing the right way. So if we open it up again, that's good. And this will be good. We're going to sew it here. We're going to flip it back here. So that'll be the inside layer. And then on the other side, we want it to look like this, but we have to sew it, right? So let's flip it over and attach it here. And then that way, we will have our outside layers, and they look good. And then we'll have our inside layers, and they will look good. I'm going to leave this off now so I can clip one at a time and sew one at a time. So let's continue on with this. Clipping this one. We've got the same marks to pay attention to. And we can make this seam allowance just a little bit bigger than the other one. The other one was just basting it on. It is a bit of a curve you're sewing on for this pattern, but that's okay. Go slow, go around the curve. It's not like a sharp corner, so your machine should be able to do it just fine. Now, when we're sewing this on, we only sew between these two pieces here, these two marks. This is the tab and this is the zipper, and we sew around. And we don't sew anywhere past that because we have to keep these all open so we can turn it nicely. Okay, so it's on. Looks pretty good. It gives it some shape. See that I did not sew into the seam allowance. There. And I had my little zipper positioned properly so it stays inside. And that's because we bend it this way when we're sewing, right? So the inside's fine. I don't think she top stitched yet. I think she sticks this side on. Now this is where the side's supposed to go, but of course we can't just sew it like that. So let's turn it over and match these pieces up. And pay attention that you're not going to go past this point here, right? You stay inside those side edges there. So I sew from here to here, just covering the tab and the zipper, and sew around the curve. And that'll make our two insides right side together and our two outsides right side together. So all four pieces are sewn on now. Now I'm going to go press it carefully and top stitch it. It might be easier to press when it's open. And you're pressing that curve, right? Watch out for these nylon zippers. Sometimes well, you don't want it to melt, but I don't usually have a problem with it. But also watch out for your vinyl. You don't want to go near that. And after we press this flat, I'm going to pin it, and I'm just going to top stitch between here and here, all the way through, both layers, because I don't want to mess with this so that I can sew it together nicely. So I'm just going to sew between here, top stitching both layers together, and I'll do the same on the other side. And then after we can make a little, well, this is my hack, I'm going to make a little D-ring tab so I can put a strap on. Okay, my top stitching is done just from there to there. And it was a lot easier to iron and sew and, you know, make sure it's pressed and pinned when this is all open. Now let's make little D-ring tabs. It doesn't really matter whether we put them on the front or the back because they're both the same. But I guess sooner or later I'm going to pick which way is front and which way is back, because I always do. So I've drawn a line down. This is 2 inches. It doesn't matter how long it is. It's a piece of scrap. You just have to remember that you're going to cut it in half and it's going to have a D-ring sitting on it. So make sure it's big enough to sew on. Well, actually you sew it on facing that way so that when you turn it out, it comes out. So this piece is big enough. I'd say it's about 4.5 inches, so 9 inches long and 2 inches wide. And right now I'm just line down the center, and I'm going to bring the edges into the center because this is a very light vinyl and I want it to be strong. So I'm just going to clip it a bit to make these pieces sit down. And then I'm going to sew down one edge and up the other edge and cut it in half. And that way when we fold it, it'll be strong enough. If you have a really strong piece of vinyl, you don't have to do this, but this is a bit floppy. So I'm just going to do that, and then I'll show you how we place it on here. Okay, now for my strap. Now this is finished. I'll show you. I sewed this fold in on both sides. So now this is technically only 1 inch wide, which is good because that's how big my strap is. And then I folded it over and I just tacked it down with some sewing here. And then after I can sew it onto one of my outer layers, and I have to make sure that you want it sticking out here a bit. I find kind of the leverage is a bit better if you obviously don't put it here because that's so close to the seam allowance, it might rip something. And don't put it here because it's so close to the sewing, you might hit it when you're sewing. But I'm going to follow this bit of a curve here just so they curve up a little bit, because when we finish, it'll be up like that. And it might be easier for the swivel hooks to sit nicely on it. So I'm just going to follow, hopefully you can see, follow this curve. Not with that one, I've just tack it down first. Follow this curve, and at about halfway, you can see how it curves like that. I'm just going to keep up with the curve and sew it down, but sew it so that it's only on one side. I don't want to sew it to the lining. So I'm just going to clip it here because this seems like a good enough spot. And then I'm going to do the other one on the other side exactly the same. Of course, I want to sew that down first, but I'm going to make sure it sits the same. Just like that. You can measure it too if you want to make sure. I don't measure a lot of things, but you can measure this space here and make sure it's the same as that side, if you like. Otherwise, just eyeball it. So I'm going to attach these two things to the outer layer only, and then after I do that, then I can sew our bag together. Okay, I put the little D-ring tabs on, and now I can put the bag together. We have to have the two outer pieces sewn together and the two lining pieces sewn together. Since mine's fabric, I'm going to get some pins. Now on the outer layer, we can sew across the bottom. And we can sew up the sides. Make sure your D-ring is sitting inside so that when you turn it out, it's on the outside. And we can go right to the end here and sew this part that we left open. We're not going to sew the square, not right now. That's the last thing that gets done. So I will pin this side now. So we're going to sew from this edge all the way down, then from this edge to here, then from this edge all the way up to here. And I like to keep everything out and just do this. Next, we are going to sew, not the bottom, because I want to have a hole at the bottom to open and turn. So I'm just going to stick the pins this way. I can tack it down a little bit on the edges, but I don't want to sew it from edge to edge. So just a little bit here and leave that open. Now the other thing some people do is they sew the seam allowance down like that. So if you prefer doing that, that's a possibility too. So they actually sew the seam allowance into the seam like that. Because that's the way it wants to turn anyway, right? So if you fold that and do that, that's the way it wants to go. And we'll do the same on the other side. You might want to open your zipper, just in case you have to stick your hand in there. Let's bend these back just a little bit, just so we can get a nice finish. And same on this side. I'm poking myself with pins. I'm not used to using pins. Usually I use clips. Okay, so on the outside, we're sewing from our folded down seam allowance. I can feel my D-ring is standing up and it's going to get in the way of sewing. So make sure before you sew that you've got everything out of the way. So I'm going to sew down here and stop, sew across and stop, and then sew up. I can feel my D-rings down. Up to here and stop again. And then start on the other side and sew down, sew across just a little bit, and then sew up. We're going to leave that opening down there. And when we sew across on the seam allowance, it's going to make it easier for us to iron this. We'll press this up so that it's easier to hand sew together or machine sew later on. But I'll show you when it's all finished what I mean. So we've got it sewn. Now for this side, yes, I have this folded down just a little bit. I missed one. Now if that ends up looking goofy on the other side, it should be okay. It's pretty tight. So I've got one side, I've got the other side, I've got the other side, and on this side, see, I've got both seam allowances sewn down. This side only had one seam allowance sewed down. I think that something got in the way there and caused some bulk. Oh yeah, there's a zipper there. I ran into the zipper. So I could go back over this one more time and make sure that that seam allowance is sitting down. But it looks pretty good. On this side, we have seam allowance sewn down. Side sewn, not the corners, the bottom not sewn in the middle, not the corners, and then this again. This one looks a bit more room. Now I am going to go over and just press this open so that after we turn it, I know where my seam allowance is, because I like to know what I'm sewing together so that it's even on both sides. And then we can turn it. There, so now when we turn it, I can sort of see the line where it's supposed to fit together. So next, let's pinch those corners together. Now, if you press it, you'll be able to see where that seam is better. But if you also push your seam allowance one way and then the other way, you can feel them almost lock together. So that's how you know that, yes, that's where I want to sew across. Okay, so I can feel that, yes, that's where the two meet. So I'm just going to stick a pin in there. And of course, over here, and over on this side. And then I sew underneath my machine with the proper seam allowance there. And then on this side, we'll do the same thing. Remember, you press one way with one and one way with the other. I can feel vinyl in there, and it feels so weird, but that's my iron-on vinyl. Let's pin that down. And then let's pin these corners down. And there's only 2 more corners left. Same thing. Press one way, press the other way. Feel it together. Your seam is matching the top and the bottom one. That's why I like to have a little bit of seam here, because it helps feel where the bottom seam is. Now, if you're going this way with this one, go this way with this one too. It makes it a bit standing a bit more uniform. So the other side has to go the opposite way. So for these, the best look you get is when you match the bottom and the side seam allowance together. And also, do not sew anything into these top corners, just the 2 layers themselves. So that's how you get the best success. So I'm going to sew these, and then after we can turn our bag inside out. Okay, now comes the moment of truth. First of all, I did what I told everybody not to do. I made one go this way and one go that way. So I'm going to try and press that down, or maybe even stick a little snip in here so that the thing can lie flat. But I'm not going to change it. This one, on the other hand, where the seam has to be hand sewed in, I've got them both facing the same way. So I'm going to leave that. It's perfect. I've got my sides sewn. The zipper is open so I can stick my hand in and I can pull it through. I don't know how well that heat transfer vinyl is going to stick, so I hope turning the bag won't make everything fall off. Oh, it looks like it's staying good. Poke your fingers in the little corners, because now you've got corners. There. Now, if this wasn't on here, I would take this to the iron and press this, because that helps it stand up when this is really flat and sharp. But I do like how this turned out. It looks like there's almost a base on this one, and it's just because we put our vinyl in the right spot. We didn't put it too low, because if we would have put our vinyl right up against this seam, it would have been on the bottom of your bag. But since we put it where the corners are, it's on the top of our bag. Now this side, we have to show, yeah, well, there you go. There's the little corners. Good. They appeared. Now, I could press this too here, and that would help me push it out. So maybe I'll go over and do that. And then I'm going to press this one more time so that I can sew this. I don't know if I want to hand sew it or if I want to sew it with the machine, but it doesn't make much difference either way. I might find some similar thread and hand sew it so it doesn't show. And then after we shove it inside the bag, see, it's got the little adhering tabs waiting for you. Now, the other thing I was going to say about these is, if you like, now you can top stitch across here and join these 2 up. It's up to you whether you want to do that or not. And on this side, this will poke out nicely because there's this hole in here. Now, If there's a hole, you've done well. It's a good thing, okay? It's when there's no hole and you've sewn the tab or the zipper into your seam that it doesn't sit right. So I'm going to go do some ironing and I'll come right back. Okay, poked out the corners. I couldn't iron them because of the vinyl that's there. I have a nice base on it though. I did top stitch along here to hold this down nicely. I just went from there to there, right? That's the part that was missing. And on this side, I've poked it out and you can see there's an itty bitty hole. Let's see if I can show you. Okay, and that means that your tab is not going to get chewed up down there. I've pressed this open so that it's nice and pointy cornered. And I've hand sewed this. So now I can shove it inside. And I've finished the pouch part of my bag. Now push the corners together. Now you can leave this like this and have a large pouch, or else we added a strap on. So there are two options. There's the inside, looks good. Oh, I've got some threads hanging. I'm going to close it up right now, and I have to make a strap. Now onto the strap. I couldn't decide which shape to use. She's got quite a few of them. Some of them have little cutouts here, and they're extra cute. So I couldn't decide, so I cut out a few and I tried them. I can always use them on other bags too, but we have the coffin one here. I thought that was okay. I'm not sure. I want to use this, and it looks good up here, but I'm not too sure whether it's going to be good down here. This one, I mean, if I had a wider webbing, like a 1.5 or something, it might look really cool. Actually, on this one, if this was, let's say this is 1 inch wide, right? So if it was something 2 inches wide, it would look extra special, because when you stick this in here, you could rivet down both of them and keep them at the wide spot to hide the rough edge. My hands are slipping. And then when you close them up, you could have some of the webbing showing through. Pretend that's one piece, right? So even for a 2 inch webbing, that would look good, having a little bit showing. So I think, anyway, I'm going to stick with this one. So basically I want to glue the sides. That has a nice curved edge just like that too. So I'm going to glue the sides after, shove some glue in there, after I put in a couple of rivets to hold this strap down. I might even just need one centered rivet, because this isn't a heavy bag, and I'm more concerned when I have a heavy bag that I've got to do something to make it extra secure. So I'm just going to put in one rivet here, and then I'm going to load in some glue too to make all the layers stick together. And then after that dries, I just attach my strap and I'm done. So I'll come back and show you in a minute what it looks like. So my strap is done. Now you can top stitch around if you like. It's up to you. I'm going to leave it and see. I glued it a lot, and I'm going to see if the glue holds, because I kind of like the look of this as it is. So I'm going to see how that works. The other thing is, make sure, I know there's swivel hooks on the end and your strap twists and turn, but you know, I like to have the screws on the inside. So if you follow through with this one, you can see that here, that your Chicago screws are facing the right way, so it looks really polished that way. So, and I guess if you're curious, this strap was 45 inches long, and it goes down to about there, and it's all glued in, so it's secure. But, you know, if you're curious. Otherwise, we just put our hooks on here. Just let the glue dry for a bit, and we'll be done. So how'd that go? Did you have fun? We'd love to see what you made. I'll leave the link below for her Facebook group, Cork and Copper Designs, because she would really love to see what you've made up. And I'll leave the link below for all her patterns that I used in this video and all the materials I used in this video too. I'm getting distracted because Sophie is over there chasing her tail. So it's kind of distracting. But I hope you had fun, and see you again soon. And thank you to Cork and Copper Designs for all the patterns that she let me use. And thanks for watching.